Broadcasting from beautiful downtown Tallahassee, it's Nantan Lupan.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. Due to his general badassery, I have to get in one more Glenn Ford movie, following up on episode 35, Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Today we have a wonderful Western that features an all-star cast. The Violent Men, 1955, has a unique twist on the classic range war theme. The level of violence in this movie is shocking for the time. So I'll jump right in with a little background on range wars. 3 things play into this. First is that government land, taken from the Indians, was free for anyone to use. I mean, unless you're an Indian and it's your ancestral homeland. So the early white and Hispanic guys that got out there found out they could run large herds of hardy cattle, such as Texas Longhorns, and they didn't have to take care of them all year. They just ride out in the spring and brand the new calves. Easy. Unless your mama's from one herd and your daddy's from another. Also, it's a problem if someone just brands willy-nilly. Just for note, willy-nilly goes back to at least 1000 AD in Old English text as, will he or nil he. When farmers moved in, they could own the land for free by settling it. This led to farmers putting up fences, and the cheapest way to put up a fence was to string barbed wire. Now, I have to admit, I was 35 when I found out it wasn't barbed wire, obviously invented by Bob. These barbed wire fences tended to break up the free range. Another contributing factor was the lack of riparian right. In the East, the water is shared by all landowners through which the water flows. Generally, in the West, you could dam the waterways to dry your neighbor out. All of the above, combined with money and guns, led to range wars. They are covered in so many Western movies I will not attempt to list them, except for Episode 2, Chisholm 1970, Episode 3, McClintock 1963, and any movie that has to do with Billy the Kid. With that little bit of background covered, I'll jump right into the cast, and it's a doozy. Glenn Ford played the role of John Parrish. Parrish was a cavalry officer for the Union in the Civil War and just wanted to be left alone to ranch. To learn more about Ford, you can listen to episode 35, Blackboard Jungle, 1955, or read his short bio at snarkymoviereviews.com. Barbara Stanwyck played Martha Wilkinson, and man, she was tough. Stanwyck has such an extensive and varied resume, I'm not sure I can do it justice here. I will attempt just the highlights. Until I started my great film adventure, I knew Stanwyck primarily as Victoria Barkley on the Big Valley television show 1965. However, there's so much more than that. Stanwyck was born in 1907 in Brooklyn, New York. I see a trend. At the age of 17, she got a job in a chorus line making $40 a week. Her first role was that year in Broadway Nights 1927, being cast as a fan dancer, basically nude with a big feather. In 1928, she moved to Hollywood. She was an active actress for almost 60 years. It is reported that she was always professional and very easy to work with. That's a formula for work success that more people should strive for today. Stanwyck was in a lot of westerns such as Union Pacific 1939 and The Violent Men 1955. She took on dramas such as Forbidden 1932 and Stella Dallas 1937. In the comedy genre, Stanwyck was in The Lady Eve 1941 with Henry Fonda. She starred in a couple of film noir classics that are near the top of any top 10 list on the subject. The first is Double Indemnity 1944 with Fred MacMurray. The second is The Strange Loves of Martha Ivers 1946. This is a very complex and interesting story, and everyone should add it to their list. When Stanwyck died in 1990, she had performed in 93 movies. Edward G. Robinson played the cattle baron Lew Wilkinson. To me, Robinson is the king of the criminal roles. I really feel he was better at it than Cagney or Bogart, who were both at the Jedi level. Robinson was born in Bucharest, Romania in 1983. His birth name was Emanuel Goldenberg and is much easier to pronounce than Bela Lugosi's birth name. Robinson moved to the U.S. at the age of 10, and his family settled in New York City. I'm seeing a trend. He went to City College to become a rabbi or lawyer, but like so many others, he was bitten by the acting bug. He started doing stock acting in 1913 and hit Broadway 2 years later. His first film role was in a silent, The Bright Shaw, 1923. However, when sound came and he played murderous criminal Rico Bandello In Little Caesar 1931, he was on his way. A very cultured man, he played in biopics such as Dr. Ehrlich's Magic Bullet 1940 and A Dispatch from Reuters 1940. His dramas include Flesh and Fantasy 1943, Double Indemnity 1944 as the lead investigator for an insurance company, The Woman in the Window 1944, and Scarlet Street 1945. One of his greatest gangster roles was that of aging Johnny Rocco in Key Largo 1948 with Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, and Lionel Barrymore. He was a friendly witness for the House Un-American Activities Committee during the McCarthy craze in the 50s. I would be most remiss if I didn't mention 3 other movies that he was in. The first one was as Dathan in The Ten Commandments, 1956, Secretary of the Interior in Cheyenne Autumn, 1964, and his last movie is Sol Roth in Soylent Green, 1973. Soylent Green is people, or humans, or something like that. Robinson died the year Soylent Green was released. Dianne Foster played the daughter, Judith Wilkinson. Foster was a nice-looking Canadian actress that looks very similar to Rita Hayworth. Hayworth was a common co-star of Ford's. In college, she studied acting. After working in Toronto for a bit, she went to England for more training. In England, she worked on stage and eventually met Orson Welles. She began playing a bad girl in British movies and was eventually encouraged to travel to Hollywood. She landed a contract with Columbia Pictures before she even had an agent. Foster's first American movie was a film noir titled Bad for Each Other, 1953, with Charlton Heston. It was Elizabeth Scott who played the bad girl here. She was active in westerns such as 3 Hours to Kill, 1954, with Dana Andrews, The Violent Men, 1955, with Glenn Ford and Edward G. Robinson, and in Night Passage, 1957, with James Stewart and Audie Murphy. Foster was in 2 more films in the 50s, The Deep Six, 1958, with Alan Ladd, and The Last Hurrah, 1958, with Spencer Tracy. The 60s found her working in television. She made 2 other movies before retiring in 1967. Brian Keith played the brother to the cattle baron, Cole Wilkinson. Keith was born to acting parents. He left acting to join the Marines in World War II. Following the war, he went back to Broadway. His career eventually led him to television and film. Keith is probably best known for the show Family Affair, 1966-71, and Hardcastle and McCormick. However, some of his movies are pretty good. These roles include Young Guns, 1988, The Mountain Men, 1980, Suppose They Gave a War and Nobody Came, 1970, The Russians Are Coming, 1966, The Hallelujah Trail, 1965, The Parent Trap, 1961 with Haley Mills. Mae Wynn played the fiancée of Parrish, Carolyn Vale. She had a pretty small role here, and I wouldn't mention her except for another movie she was in, The Caine Mutiny, 1954. She tried out for the role of the prostitute in From Here to Eternity, 1953, but lost to Donna Reed. Basil Ruysdael played Farmer Hinkleman. I talked about Ruysdael in episode 35, Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Lita Milan played Elena, the Mexican love interest of Cole Wilkinson. Milan was a dancer and model and was supposed to be very beautiful, although they did not show it in this movie. Some of her films were The Ride Back, 1957, Naked in the Sun, 1957, and The Left-Handed Gun, 1958, with Paul Newman playing Billy the Kid. In 1958, Milan married the son of Dominican Republic dictator Rafael Trujillo. Her husband seized power after the murder of his father, but had to flee the country shortly after. She lived out the rest of her life in Spain. Richard Jaeckel played a gunslinger for the cattle baron, Wade McClintock. I have to say this is probably my least favorite actor of all times based on a role he played on Little House on the Prairie. However, he has some real acting chops. He was discovered while working as a mailboy at 20th Century Fox. His first role was in Guadalcanal Diary, 1943. He joined the U.S. Navy from 1944 to 48. After he got out, he was in Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949, with John Wayne. He is remembered for playing a military policeman in The Dirty Dozen, 1967. He has a great death scene and sometimes a great notion, 1970. With over 70 movies, Jaeckel died at the age of 70. James Westerfield played the corrupt Sheriff Magruder. Westerfield was a Southerner that played a lot of small roles. He is known for On the Waterfront, 1954, True Grit, 1969, and Hang 'em High, 1968, where he was more worried about getting a big chaw of tobacco than about getting hanged. He also did a bit of work for Disney, including The Shaggy Dog 1959, The Absent-Minded Professor 1961, and Son of Flubber 1963. Willis Bouchey played the fair sheriff Martin Keener, but he was shot down about a minute into the movie. In a 30-year career, Bouchey was in almost 150 movies and television shows. He showed up a lot in John Ford-directed movies and movies where Jimmy Stewart was the lead actor. Bouchey's movies include Pickup on South Street 1953 with Richard Widmark, The Big Heat 1953 with Glenn Ford, Suddenly 1954 with Frank Sinatra and Sterling Hayden, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance 1962 with Jimmy Stewart, where he delivered the last line, "Nothing too good for the man who shot Liberty Valance." Richard Farnsworth played an uncredited anchor writer. I spoke about him briefly in episode 19, The Cowboys 1972. Story. The Anchor Ranch hands are riding into town led by gunslinger Wade Matlock, Richard Jaeckel. Sheriff Martin Keener, Willis Bouchey, warns John Parrish, Glenn Ford, to stay off the streets, but he walks out and almost gets run down by the riders. Wade faces him to offer a gunfight, but Parrish continues on his way. As the gang dismounts, a young Mexican girl, Elena, Lita Milan, comes looking for Cole Wilkinson, Brian Keith, but he is not with the gang. In the saloon, the gang starts beating on a man that has recently been forced to sell out to their boss. When it spills into the street, Sheriff Keener goes and takes Wade's gun. As soon as the sheriff turns his back, Wade takes another gun and backshoots him. Parrish goes upstairs to be examined by the doctor. In westerns, doctors' offices are always on the second floor. It would seem easier to get sick people in on the first floor. As the doctor examines Parrish, we find that he was shot through the lung while he was a Union cavalry officer in the Civil War. He has come out west to die, but he got well, and now he's ready to sell his ranch, get married, and head east. Parrish goes to his fiance's house, still feeling bad about not standing up for right. Parrish is beating himself up for his own inaction, but all Carolyn Bale, May Wynn, talks about is selling out, getting married, and moving east. When Parrish leaves, she follows him to the barn, and I'm guessing here, has sex to convince him to sell. As Caroline does the perp walk back to her parents' house, she is accosted by an old boyfriend that says she only wants out of the town. As Parrish is telling his ranch hands that he is selling to Anchor, his neighbors, the Perdues, ride in and beg him not to sell. The Perdues remind him of how they helped him in the beginning and what Anchor has done. He says he has no choice as they are the only ones with that kind of money. Parrish rides out to the Anchor Ranch. As he gets closer, more men follow him, and it has the feel of an armed camp. The first Wilkinson he meets is the daughter, Judith, Dianne Foster. She has total contempt for Parrish as he is selling out to her father. He's called into the house by Martha Wilkinson, Barbara Stanwyck, where he meets crippled Lou Wilkinson, Edward G. Robinson, and Lou's brother Cole Wilkinson. The meeting is very tense, even though Parrish wants to sell. They offer him a ridiculously low offer and treat him rudely. Lou explains that he was shot in a range war 12 years ago as he tried to acquire the entire valley. Lou also says he got rid of Wade.
Why provoke him deliberately, offering so little? For a few $1,000s more, you can have his place without any trouble.
Parrish is too sure of himself. I had to knock him down a few pegs. He'll be back. We'll get it at our price, Martha.
Martha sneaks into Cole's room and begs him not to go see the Mexican girl. They talk of their plans after Lou is gone.
I've never stopped loving you all the years we were apart. I wanted you back here a long time ago.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You didn't go with it?
I've lived with half a man for 12 years. I hate myself and him. I've played the part of a loving wife when I can't bear the touch of his hands. Oh, Cole, you're the only happiness I have here. Don't do anything to destroy it, please don't. Send the Mexican girl away.
I know where I'm going. I'm going to make sure Parrish sells.
Be careful of him.
He doesn't even wear a gun.
They didn't make him captain in the cavalry for nothing.
The Parrish hands see Anchor riders heading to attack Purdue. However, they have got their target wrong. Even though they don't need to, Cole has ordered the gang to send a message to Parrish. They find Bud Hinkleman, William Phipps, alone, and Wade leads the attack. The Anchor men lasso and eventually murder Bud. After finding Bud murdered, Parrish and his men take the body into town to be buried. The former deputy, now Sheriff Magruder, James Westerfield, won't take any action. The Anchor gang is in the saloon waiting, and the sheriff has his gang waiting to wipe out Parrish and his men when they make their move. All of Parrish's men want revenge, but he forces them to leave town, saying he will take Bud's gun and spend the night at his fiance's house. He also tells the men that a trap has been set.
You better get out of the way, Mr. Parrish.
Well, you heard what the sheriff said.
We're through listening to you and him.
Please step aside, Captain. Coming from the east, you don't understand how we look at these things.
Well, even out here, the law is the law.
Right now, the law is working for Anchor, and you know it.
All right, go ahead. Walk into a trap. Get yourself killed. That's just what they want. They're waiting for you now over at Morgan's. But if you do go over there, you better look behind you, because that's where Magruder will be with a whole force of deputies. Don't you see that's what he's trying to do? Draw you into action, then Anchor can kill all of you legally.
What would you do?
You mean if I were handling it?
Yes.
Well, seeing as I was outnumbered, I'd probably let them think I was retreating. I'd pick my own battleground. And that way I wouldn't be taking on the law, too. I'd have the element of surprise on my side. That is, if I wanted any part of it, which I don't.
The Parrish men ride out, and Parrish follows a little later. The sheriff's men leave, and the guards on the outside of the saloon go back inside. Parrish places Bud's gun under his coat and slowly rides back to the saloon. He calmly walks in, and one of the Anchor men puts a gun to his back. Wade comes up and sees that Parrish is unarmed. He orders him a shot of whiskey, then another. Parrish has totally disarmed them with cool. He explains that no one needs to get hurt if Wade will just go to the sheriff and confess. When Wade laughs, Parrish backhands him and in one move puts Bud's gun to Wade's belly and pulls the trigger. He takes Wade's gun before he falls and backs out of the bar with two guns raised. He gallops back to his ranch. In this one action, Parrish has avoided an ambush and destroyed their best asset. This could be right out of Sun Tzu's Art of Warfare 513 BC. For example, pretend inferiority and encourages arrogance, or he who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious. The next morning, Parrish goes to Anchor and runs into Judith. They have a few words before he goes to see Martha, Lou, and Cole. Lou denies that he sent Wade, and you see that Martha and Cole are operating behind Lou's back. Parrish keeps poking them until they want to fight.
You know, Mr. Wilkerson, we're going to be neighbors for a long time. It's up to you whether or not we live in peace. I came here to stop this killing before it went any further. But I warn you, I'll fight for the privilege of being let alone. And I can take care of anything you or your hired gunman can throw against me.
Now you listen to me.
There's nothing you can do on my range that I can't do on yours. And you've got a lot more to lose than I have. Now don't force me to fight, because you won't like my way of fighting.
Lou and Cole get into a fight about who has done a better job driving people out. Martha defends the work Cole has done. Finally, provoked by his wife Martha, Lou orders Cole to burn them out. It seems that Parrish set them up so they would attack him. Parrish goes back to his ranch, and Caroline is there giving him the business. Bud's dad, Tex Hinkleman, Basil Ruysdael, and his brother arrive, and they offer to help. They let Parrish keep Bud's gun. Because Parrish is going to fight, Caroline breaks off the engagement. Parrish gathers his men and moves out to the hills to the sound of a military soundtrack with horns blowing. The men can't understand why they don't protect the ranch or hit the Anchor riders before they attack. Parrish explains that they could be branded outlaws if they attack first, but after they burn the ranch, the Anchor men will be night riders and can be shot on sight. They watch from the hills as the Anchor riders burn everything. Parrish expects them to let their guard down and return home by the quickest route.
What makes you so sure they're going to hit us tonight?
They will.
I still think it's a mistake. Leaving the ranch, which is as good as a fort, to come up here and fight in the open. Splitting up the men, we're bound to be outnumbered.
Never meet the enemy on his terms.
Burning the ranch.
What do you expect him to do, give it a fresh coat of paint?
You knew they'd burn the ranch, and yet you had us pull out?
That's right. Wilkerson controls the law here. You give him any excuse, and he'll have us declared outlaws. Nobody can blame us for what we do to night riders burning our ranch.
How do you know they'll come this way?
I think we abandon it. They'll be off guard. They're bound to take the shortest way home.
They do, and ride right into Parrish's boxed ambush with a back door. In total, Anchor loses 8 men. Again from Sun Tzu, he who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious. Lou is shocked when he finds out what kind of man he is fighting.
How many men did you lose?
8.
You were going to get them out of the valley.
Lou, why do you always quarrel with Cole? Your real concern should be Parrish.
I'm beginning to think I was all wrong about Parrish. I don't like to make that bad a mistake about a man. He let his ranch go up in smoke just to set up an ambush. There's a fine, cold-blooded devil. I didn't know he had that much iron in him.
How can you talk so tolerantly about Parrish?
I don't see how we can criticize any man's way of fighting after the company we've been keeping lately.
Parrish tries to run Cole away, and Judith gets ready to call her mother out for the affair with her uncle. Martha, as cold as ice, tells Judith that she would never hurt her father. Shamed, Judith runs out. Lou reminds Cole that the men here ride for money. They're not used to taking punishment. Impugning his manhood, Martha goads Lou into getting ready for the fight. Judith rides into the hills to find Parrish. She blames all the trouble on Cole and begs for peace. Parrish tells his men to keep her here until morning as they ride out for the next raid. This time they're taking the fight to Anchor. Back at Anchor, Cole is getting ready to leave. Martha throws herself at him, but he is leaving for Elena. To begin the attack, Parrish and his men stampede the cows and horses. This forces all the men to leave the ranch house area and head to the range. Parrish's men burn the outlying Mexican workers' houses. At the main house, Martha tells Lou that Cole is gone. About that time, a burning wagon crashes through a large window at the house. Lou and Martha start down the stairs, but Lou drops his crutches. Martha picks them up, looks at Lou, and throws the crutches into the fire. Martha runs out and heads to town with the Mexican workers. Unknown to Martha, Lou crawls out of the burning house. In town, Martha busts in on Cole and Elaine and tells him Lou is dead. He sends Elena out, as it seems money is stronger than love. Judith rides back to Anchor and finds her father, scorched but still alive. Lou knows Martha is with Cole. He has probably known all along. Martha says it wasn't just Parrish, but the farmers were involved in the killing of her husband and the burning of their ranch. The sheriff deputizes a mob to extract revenge, restore order. As Cole rides out with the mob, Elena begs him to take her back to Texas. He knocks her down with his horse. Elena begs Martha to leave Cole, but Martha only offers money and contempt. The posse goes on a valley-wide rampage, shooting and burning. Judith has taken her father to the house of former enemy Tex Hinkleman. Parrish works on getting the innocent farmers out of the way. The posse, Cole, and Martha all meet back at Anchor for the night. When Parrish finds Lou, Judith gives a peace speech to the two men. The three, Judith, Parrish, and Lou, decide they have to ride to Anchor to stop Cole. Lou orders all the men off his property. Finally, Cole and Martha come out of another house. Parrish faces him down. Cole fires about 3 wild shots, while Parrish calmly draws a bead and finishes him with 1 shot. Faced with the sight of Lou still alive, Martha runs out the gate into a one-person ambush set by Elena. Elena kills Martha. Later, on the main street of town, Judith delivers a job offer from her father for Parrish to run Anchor. Parrish says he has his own place and begins to ride away. Then they face each other and love music plays. Parrish says that your father always told me he would get my ranch one way or the other. World famous short summary: Easterner uses Eastern philosophy to tame the West. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes and give me a review. If you want to communicate, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show notes to my site. Beware the Moors.